Okay, we are live again with Cartoon Brew's
Go.
live stream. My name is Amid. I'm the publisher and editor in chief of Cartoon Brew, and I'm joined by Cole Delaney from Dublin.
From Dublin. That's all you need to know about me. That's my title. That's my purpose. Is I'm in Dublin at the moment, but I'm actually from a place called Leash in Ireland, which I don't think you've ever heard of, Amid. Um, but yeah, hello. How are you?
I'm based in LA. I don't know if I even mentioned that. So did I mention that from LA?
No, you didn't.
Okay,
Are
so
you
we
actually
got
from LA? Sorry, are you actually? Where
no,
are
no,
you from
I'm not
originally?
from LA. I grew up here,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
but yeah. So I meant I'm based in LA at this moment.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so yeah. But welcome. We were on a kind of unintentional summer break. So this is our first podcast since our first live stream since August, early August,
Yeah.
and. The animation industry is still the same. uh, LA is still very much quiet
Mm.
in the animation world, but things are happening elsewhere. Animation, it's an ironic year because there's so much good stuff coming out this year, and there's so much
Yeah.
happening, but it's a very quiet production wise in LA. A lot of people still tell me, "Hey, we're out of work," and that hasn't changed since August. So, it was funny because last year when we were like in the kind of the depressed moment of animation, everyone was like, second half of 2024, that's when things are going to pick back up again, and that has not happened.
Yeah.
There's a lot of productions happening in different places, but the general industry has not picked up in the way that people thought it was going to pick up. And now people are saying it's probably going to be 2025 sometime. Um, but yeah, well,
Not to laugh at the situation because people are out of work, but it's just so hard to predict, isn't it? Are things being greenlit? Is that happening at the moment? Like, if you heard of things that have been announced in the industry that might be scaling up, or
there's always things that are being greenlit,
yeah,
but there's a general like, is are people working? Right.
yeah,
And I don't think a lot of people are working right now. There's a lot of people who are out of work. There's DreamWorks TV Animation and Cartoon Network. I mean, they slowed down a lot in the last few
yeah,
years, and it
yeah,
hasn't really, nothing's replaced that yet. And also Netflix kind of they changed their whole model, and
mm,
that was giving a lot of people work. And you're reading things. People are leaving LA, and you're seeing that
mm,
a lot on Twitter as well, where people are talking about, I just can't, stay here. LA is a supremely expensive city,
mm,
and if you don't have consistent work, you can't really live here. So there are a lot of people who are leaving LA, and
yeah,
when is that going to change? When are people going to start coming back? Are people going to start coming back, or is it just going to be remote work from here on out? We don't know. It's a
yeah,
very kind of unstable moment, and plus we have the union. The animators don't. They have a contract that's been extended for a few weeks, but they don't have a new contract yet, and the first round of negotiations didn't lead to a contract. That's not out of the ordinary, but
yeah.
they're going to go back to the negotiating table, I believe, next week, and we're going to be covering that a lot more as they go back to the negotiating table. And
Mm.
until that's resolved, I don't think things are going to pick back up again. So we'll see what happens.
That's so interesting. I'm not sure what the kind of scale of the industry is like here at the moment, or the health, the pulse of the industry here. I was recently at a women in animation event here in Ireland, which is an amazing thing that two of the girls, Lynn and Kirsten, put on. It's part of the women in animation group, but it's here in Ireland. But it's generally, I think, the event in Dublin that everyone attends, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of some people from Kilkenny came up on a bus, and everyone is there at that kind of mixer, and it's totally open, it's totally free, so anyone can step in from any level. There's a kid who just graduated and her dad was there chaperoning her. That was kind of
Wow.
cool. But there was also, executive level people there, and they all seem to be working and doing okay. There was only one studio that I'd heard where they have to temporarily kind of not close, but temporarily take a break just because they're waiting for the other projects to start, and they don't have the capacity to hold on to staff during the kind of a month or two period. But then everything starts up again. There's like a gap in production basically. But apart from that, it seems to be okay. But I won't know. There's the Kilkenny Animated, which is the animation event that kind of Cartoon Saloon and Lighthouse put on. That's the first weekend of October. So I'll hopefully see some people there and get a temperature check in the industry here then.
You're preempting it because I was going to do a story on that today.
Oh, really?
They just announced their lineup. They got who's coming? Glenn Keane is coming. John
Glenn Keane,
Musker,
John Musker,
Joanna
Joanna Quinn,
Quinn.
Les Mills.
Yes,
Yeah,
and Mo Willems. Mo
yeah,
Willems. He did Sheep in the Big City. Mo Williams. That's Richard Williams' wife.
yeah.
She's going to be presenting the
Yeah.
new book on Dick Williams, and it is an amazing book. We're going to have her on here as a guest soon to talk
Oh,
about the
amazing.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's going to be at Kilkenny as well. Kilkenny's it's a really lineup of kind of prestige
Yeah.
veterans, and it's
Yeah.
going to be a fun event, I think.
And let me tell you, this event, if anyone's in Ireland or elsewhere, it's just literally you go to talks or whatever it is all day, and then everyone goes to the pub afterwards, and you're all in the same place. So you can just come and meet these industry heroes and veterans. They're going to be around all weekend. And then usually Animation Ireland or Skillnet, who are kind of like the training bodies, and Animation Ireland is like all the producers, is a producer led body of all the animation studios. They'll then host events based on who's in the country as well, like workshops and other master classes. So it's amazing. Like when the talent comes over, they're used, definitely. But I've got some tickets. I'm going to go down to Kilkenny definitely and sit in some of these master classes. They have one event where, Ameed, you won't believe it, they're all in a panel together, all of them.
Wow,
So that'll be a really interesting event. They all have their own ones, but then there's a panel discussion as well that I'm really looking forward to.
that's going to be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could go to that. That sounds like a really fun event.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked you about the other big animation festival in Ireland,
Dingle.
Animation
Yeah.
Dingle, and you
Yeah.
said, yeah, there's a lot of apparently there's a lot of pubs. you said people go to the pub for that one too. So I guess
Yeah.
that's the Irish.
I know people that just, well, some of the events are held in pubs as well. I just want to put that out there. Because there are halls of events, but some people I know go to that and they literally only go to the bars afterwards. They don't tend to attend the events. They just go to the bar afterwards because everyone ends up there. But Dingle is very isolated. It's right down the very bottom of Ireland, right down in Kerry. It's on the Atlantic Ocean. It's beautiful. It's cold, rugged landscapes. They shot some of Star Wars down there.
Wow.
The Skellig Islands, they're near Dingle as well. You can kind of see them when you're driving around the peninsula. But it's far away. It's like, well, far by Irish standards. For you, it's like going to the other side of LA, I'm sure. But for us, it's like 3 or 4 hours to drive.
Wow. Well, let's get started. So today's
Yeah,
main
let's
topic.
talk about the news.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
enough Ireland. Ireland seems to come
Yeah,
up every time we do
yeah,
a
yeah.
live
Shut up
stream.
about Ireland. Yeah.
No, but Ireland's great. Just go.
That'll be your
um,
epitaph. Yeah.
let's. So today's main topic is going to be taking a very kind of early look at the Oscars
Mm,
for Best Animated Feature, and by extension, this means the Golden Globes, the Annie Awards, all that sort of award season
yeah.
stuff that we have coming up. Now, a lot of places start doing Oscar predictions and stuff in May, at least on
Mm,
the live action side. And I think that's just way too early. I think September's quite
yeah.
early to be looking at the Oscars, especially because so many of the animated features aren't even out yet. So
Mm.
I think this is considered early for animation, but
Yeah.
certainly there's been a lot of Oscar prediction talk already, and we know that because you look at all the sites and they've already got their predictions going up. But I want to talk a little bit about what we think is going to be Oscar contending this
Mm.
year, and a good place to start is this website Gold Derby, because they actually put up not all the films are up here, but most of them are, and we can just kind of look at what people are talking about. The Gold Derby is that they kind of survey different people that are in the business,
Mm.
and
Mm.
more on the critics side, not the actual filmmakers, but they survey the critics, and um, and they have their list up right now of what are the key contenders, and
Really? Oh,
we can just go down the list and see what they're saying.
yeah.
Uh, First of all, they're saying Wild Robot. That's the number one pick right now,
Yeah.
and it's not out yet. It's coming out in a couple weeks, but I used that as the thumbnail for our our live stream today, simply because
Yeah.
this film has a ton of positive buzz around it. It's Chris Sanders' first animated feature in over a decade. His last feature
Yeah.
was The Cruise, and then he went and did live action. But he's back now, and he's created
Mm.
something that people, like I saw a 20-minute preview of the film, and
Yeah,
uh,
me
and
too.
and I was almost like crying. It
Mm.
was very emotional, and it seems that holds up like it's a very emotional film,
Yeah.
and uh, it has all the right elements. It has a star voice actor, Lupito Nyong'o, who
Hmm.
is we mentioned this uh, yesterday, where on the press tour that she's doing, she is uh, basically winning. uh, uh, she's speaking so highly of the animation crew, and she's
Mm.
basically doing amazing work right now to promote the film in a very positive way. There's just positive vibes all around this film,
Yeah.
and you interviewed. We have the interview up on uh, our YouTube page, but you
Mm.
interviewed Chris Sanders and some of the crew for the film. But you didn't see the whole film yet, have you?
No, I think I saw the same preview that you did. I saw two different clips that were about 10 minutes each in Annecy. Um, yeah, really beautiful. I've got to say, I was totally taken back because they talk a lot about the technical achievements of the film, right? But this came up during the conversation that we had in the interview. They're amazing, but they only go so well if the story doesn't hold up behind that, right? I mean, people watch this stuff um, to have some kind of cathartic or emotional connection to something like that, and you could have all the most beautiful technical work in the world, but if it's just a technical showcase and doesn't have an interesting story behind it, it's not going to work. And that's where you have someone like Chris Sanders, who is so proven to be one of the best relational, I think, storytellers, certainly of his generation. And I say this every time: Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, all that work, incredible stuff. I know he wasn't the only one on that, but again, the seeds of that are really in there. And Cruz is quite good as well, actually. I think people don't give it enough credit, but he's a um, he's very good at finding the emotional beats of things. Really getting to the core of stuff, and it seems like the Wild Robot has that in spades. It's just set up for incredible stuff, really.
And there's a good story here too, because this is Chris Sanders. I mean, he put in his time at Disney. You look at a lot of the classic Disney films. He was involved in Beauty and the Beast
Yeah,
and
Mulan.
uh,
You know.
Mulan. Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's put in his time. it's also his first time that he's solo in the director's chair, which is
Yeah.
incredible, really incredible to think about. Like he's always
Mm.
worked with Dean DeBlois on The Croods.
Yeah.
He worked with Kirk DeMako. This is his first time that he's actually directing a film by himself, which is
Mm.
an animated film by himself, which
Yeah.
is crazy to think about because he's been in this business for 40 years now, and he's kind of, he's been allowed to make a film exactly the way he wants to make it, or we can assume that I'm sure, as much as you can in a big studio, he's been able to make his own film. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
really excited about that. And then we have another. To me, Wild Robot is a shoo-in. We know that's going to be nominated.
Mm.
The other film that we know is going to be nominated is Inside Out 2. And this one you can't deny. It
Yeah.
was a cultural phenomenon this year when it came out. It's the highest
Yeah.
grossing animated feature of all time. And it's Pixar. Pixar's back with this film.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I would say that this race is at this moment, it's really down to these two films in terms of who's going to win. That this
Mm.
is it, these are the two big kind of films that people are going to have to choose between, and it's going to be really interesting
Yeah.
to see what happens. But certainly you can't deny that Inside Out 2 is an instant nominee, and it's one of the front runners for the Oscar this year. Um,
Mm.
I don't know if you have any comments on on that.
Well,
Uh,
I was just thinking, when Spider Verse came out, everyone, even people who aren't animators, they all commented on the style of it, right? That was a big thing for Spider Verse. I'm not sure people will be aware of that for the Wild Robot. I think maybe in animation circles, you definitely see the the kind of push and everything because in terms of story, like I haven't seen the Wild Robot fully, but Inside Out 2 really got me very well. It got me. Like I mean, it really got me. And it's a beautiful story. It's so well crafted. I think it's genuinely, to me it's just a brilliant, perfect film. I haven't seen The Wild Robot in terms of story, but I know it will be good. But if you're to separate the two out in terms of like, okay, story 5 out of 5, tick tick, but then you think about technical elements and stuff, the Wild Robot is all over that. It kind of pushes the boundaries of animation further. But I wondered, will people outside of the industry see that as something? People who might be voting on this see that because Spider Verse was clearly a technical innovation, and Wild Robot is to us, but I'm not sure it reads that way outside the industry.
Yeah, the last couple of years, we're seeing like this greater awareness of pushing
Yeah,
styles. You had Puss in Boots, the sequel, that was
yeah,
nominated, and I don't think a lot of people expected that, but that was hailed for its stylistic kind of innovation. And
mm,
that is becoming a factor, I think, in CG
yeah,
animation, but it's also not the key thing that people, the Disney brand is still incredibly important. Disney's not innovating as hard in terms of the final look. I mean, they're doing technical innovations in every film, Pixar
yeah,
and
of
Disney
course.
animation, but they're not
Mm,
being as kind of upfront about it. Like they're not pushing styles in the same way, and that really hasn't had too big of an impact on them getting nominated. It has had an impact on them winning because they haven't won in the last 2 years, and so that's going to be a
yeah,
really interesting storyline to see how that plays out. Whether
mm,
there, again, I think in the general populace, you're perfectly correct in that it really doesn't matter to the broader Academy voters of whether this film's technically innovative. That's something that
mm.
that will definitely factor into the Annies, but
Yes,
it may
yeah.
not factor into the Oscars as much. So then number three here we have Memoir of a
Mm.
Snail. This is the stop
Oh yeah.
motion film by Adam Elliott. And Adam Elliott has had amazing success at the Oscars. I forget how many times he's
Mm.
been nominated, but he won for Harvey Crumpet, his short film, and then he had
Yeah,
Mary and Max, and he's
Mary
always
and Max.
been a factor at awards. Now, I saw the film, and I admire it. I think it's a really interesting film. But uh, I also had like no desire to see it again. It's a really tough film to watch, and I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't know if it has that kind of, you know, uh, I don't know. I really can't say. I certainly
Yeah.
wouldn't put it at 3. I would put it as a key contender, but I don't know if I would rate it as highly as it's being put up here. Um, and you see, the experts votes it has 0 right now. So it's but most of them have 0. I mean, I think a lot of people haven't weighed in, but
Yeah.
I don't know how this one's going to play out. This is a totally it could go either way. You had a film like Flea, which was also kind of difficult to watch, but it was much more structured as a film. This one
Yeah.
felt like it it was most appropriate as like a 45-minute short, but you can't make a 45-minute short. There's no market for that. So you either have to go half hour, which wouldn't have been enough, or you have to extend it out to 90 minutes. And they obviously, extended it out, but it didn't work for me as a 90-minute film. It was
Mm.
just a slog to sit through. And this is not to say that it's not a good film. I think it's a excellent example of animated feature filmmaking. It's just not the type of film that's gonna have a um I it's not the type of film that's gonna like get people excited to go to the theaters to see
Okay.
it. So I don't know. Now,
Is
having
it?
said that,
Yeah.
IFC is behind it. IFC Films,
Mm.
and so it does have distribution. It's coming out next month in the U.S. We'll see what happens.
What would? Here's a question. Now, this may not be the place to answer this, but something like that, right? I've not seen Memoir of a Snail, but from what I've talked to people about, I missed it at Annecy. Obviously, like you said, it's a tough film to watch, but in the same vein of like, Grave of the Fireflies is a very tough film to watch. Do you know that kind of thing? Um, what, and maybe rely on your insight of years of experience here. I mean, what helps promote a film like this to be kind of seen as hailed as like, wow, that's something you have to see, especially out in LA.
I don't think you can. Not
Oh,
with this
okay.
type of
Oh,
film. It's the production wise, it's
yeah,
beautifully produced, but it's also you can tell it's not a Hollywood film, and that's great that it's not a Hollywood film, but it's a
yeah,
very limited audience film, and it would be quite nice to see it nominated.
yeah,
But in a year like this, when we have so many other films, I just don't know how it's going to play out.
yeah,
It's not like Grave of the Fireflies. It is kind of it is emotionally difficult to watch
mm,
a little bit, but more than the emotionally difficult part, it's difficult to watch just in terms of the way it was structured. Right? It's
oh, okay,
extremely if it's Adam Elliott you want, it's Adam Elliott you're going to get. It's very dialogue driven. It's
yeah,
narrator driven, and a narrator driven film for 90 minutes where a narrator is telling you every action on the screen. That's tough to watch. It's just
mm,
I don't know how else to put it. Conversely, we have another film here called Flow, which is from Latvia, and this one I have not seen. I'm going to see it
mm,
in a couple weeks in Ottawa, and this is, uh, I believe it's completely dialogueless, which is the complete
wow,
opposite of Memoir of a Snail, which is wall to wall dialogue. And
yeah,
I dialogueless films don't always play well either. For people don't know how to read that if they're not in animation.
yeah,
But this film has been getting amazing buzz. There was a social media post about it on this discussing film website on Twitter, and
mm,
it was people are like really excited about this film that has no stars in it, is from Latvia, is made by a very young filmmaker who does have another feature film to his credit, but is
Mm.
not. This is not like a normal kind of animated feature. This is kind of an art film, and
Yeah.
it has been picked up by Sideshow and Janus Films, which is a very famous art house distributor in the U.S.
Mhm.
This one could be, to me, it's a dark horse that very much could end up being nominated.
Mm.
Again, I haven't seen it. All I've seen is the trailer, but I know the filmmaker, and there's a buzz behind this film that you do not see for an independent
Mm.
Latvian dialogueless film, right? And I think it's because the storytelling is incredible. Like I think it's graphic storytelling, and again, I can't talk about the story or anything, so I don't want to, you know,
Yeah.
go this is it, right? I'll know in a couple weeks, once I see it, uh, what the chances are, but I don't
I
know.
wonder, is anyone who's watching, has anyone seen Flow? Let us know what you think about it,
Yeah, I'd
or
love
any of
to
these
know.
films, of course, and what your predictions might be as well. Please do let us know, because that'd be really interesting. I've not seen Flow either, but it there is this is something I guess I'm still trying to get around. The idea is what causes something like this to have a pulse, because that swept the board, right? It's sweeping the board in terms of like awards and um, just accolades, like globally, not just at animation events. Like it's quite well recognized. So I wonder what's. I guess I'll just have to see it and stop looking from a distance and actually just watch it and then understand what's happening. But I wonder. I'd be curious because if something like Moana 2 comes out, which is their next one, then will that just automatically take a place away from these other things? Because if we know Disney always, or Pixar, I know it's changed in recent times, but they've always said there's usually two seats in there for the Disney films.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a big part of whether Flow kind of uh, succeeds or not at the Oscars happens behind the scenes. It's whether
Yeah,
they're willing to put in the money into the film to promote it.
yeah,
There's a lot of stuff that happens in LA, that a lot of reach out that happens that isn't really public, right? And
mm,
it, it ultimately does come down to money sometimes, right? Like like are they going to put in the money to get this film out there? We'll
mm,
find out. I really don't know, but because the distributor isn't like, deep pocketed, but they're going to have to do a lot of reach out, and that same goes for Memoir of a Snail. They're actually
mm,
doing a good job of getting the word out there about the film. Flow, the distributor, hasn't done much yet, and so
uh,
if they don't pick up, and of course it's a little early right now, but in the next month, if they don't pick up the pace on doing their LA outreach,
yeah,
um, regardless of how great the film is, it's not gonna make an impact. You said a really
mm,
interesting thing though about Moana 2 here, that Disney used to have two seats, and that has not happened in recent years. But
yeah,
we look back at the Oscar nominations from before, and in 2020, it hasn't really happened since 2020. But
mm,
that I take that back. I see 2021. It was Raya the Last Dragon and Encanto. In 2020, you
mm,
had Soul and Onward. In
yeah,
2018, you had Incredibles 2 and Ralph Breaks the Internet. And you also had in 2016, you had Zootopia and Moana. That
mm,
year, it was kind of deserved to have those two films. But these other years, there was always a lesser Pixar or Disney film that was taking the second seat, and that
yeah,
hasn't happened in recent years. In 2022, we only had one
mm,
Disney film, and in 2023, we had one Disney film, right, that
yeah,
got nominated. But that hasn't happened, so it will be really interesting to see because Inside Out, again, we know it's one of the key films that's
Yeah.
going to be nominated, but will Moana 2 be nominated as well?
Mm.
Uh, I I don't know yet. I haven't seen the film, and I don't really know how it's going to play out to have a sequel to a film that is incredibly popular on streaming, but it is a sequel, and it's a sequel that I don't know that a lot of people were asking for. Other than
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the first one's being viewed a lot
I
on
mean,
streaming, so they're going to
that's a
make
really
it.
interesting point. Yeah, I think just to, sorry if I'm cutting across it, but that's a really interesting point of like we've seen that where streaming is actually a big thing here because it keeps a film in people's mind. Like, Inside Out 2 and Despicable Me 4, people had access to watch the previous ones very readily on streaming um to get onto this stuff. And Moana is very popular in streaming. It is very, very popular. So I think that'd be really curious. I'd be curious to see the release of that to see how, if that kind of solidifies this idea of when you have something on streaming readily available that is kind of beloved, does that help then boost some kind of drive into the cinema?
Yeah, that's the narrative that we're going to be watching. That's exactly
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I mean, Moana was, I think, the most viewed film on streaming in 2023. Like it was like
Well,
and it's an 8-year-old film, and it was the
yeah,
most viewed film. So will that translate into box
yeah,
office for Moana 2? I think it will. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to do well. I don't think it's going to make $1 billion or anything because the first one
yeah.
didn't either. But I do think the film's going to do well. Um,
Well, I did see recently on social media that the song from Moana start to pick up a bit again.
mm,
That main song when she's sailing away, how far will I go or something, that started to pick up. So all that stuff kind of feeds into it, and if that's in people's um, conscience, you never know how that's gonna pop in. We have a comment here just before we go on that I see, anyways. And it says the wild robot is worthy of winning the award for DreamWorks. Sounds like a battle cry there for DreamWorks. Um, yeah, thank you. That's
when
really interesting. I wonder.
that's when was the
Yeah,
last time DreamWorks won? I'm gonna look right here, see when it was. I
that's a
want to say it
great
was
question
Shrek.
because they've always been very good. Shrek, that was the first Oscar.
That was and
Yeah, really, can't be that long
oh
ago.
wow, yeah, they have not won since 2001.
Oh my
It's been
god,
23 years since they've won. So that is if you want to talk about like a narrative of is it their time? This might be
that's
their year.
blown my mind.
Yeah.
23 years, and they
They've made a
won
lot of good
and
films.
they've made incredible films in that time. And I also want to say I'm very certain, and you can correct me on this, but it was DreamWorks that pushed for the animated Oscars category, wasn't it? Jeffrey Katzenberg, after Chicken Run didn't do so, it wasn't. It was after Chicken Run, I remember, with Shrek
I don't
coming
know
up.
the history, but I'm sure he was involved in it in some way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was, yeah, because that was like the heyday or the start of DreamWorks was around that time because it was
So
Prince of Egypt and Ants and Chicken Run.
DreamWorks
Sorry,
is
go on.
yeah, I was gonna say their first film was '98, Prince of Egypt, and they won in
Yeah,
2001, like 3 years later, and they haven't won since. Like that's just incredible to think about. And so I think there's certainly we've been waiting for like this is if they have a shoe in for like winning, like this has got to be it. This is
yeah,
Wild Robot. It's got to be their year for just from that perspective only,
yeah.
right? Like they're way overdue. Um, then we have Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. So Netflix is interesting. Netflix has been doing really well at the Oscars the last few
Yeah.
years. We saw the Wallace
Pinocchio, I
and
think.
Gromit
Was
here.
it?
They won in 2005, but
Yeah.
look, I mean Netflix. They
Well, that was
won for
DreamWorks
Pinocchio.
actually.
No, no,
That
no.
was
I
under
know.
DreamWorks, wasn't it?
It
Yeah.
was, it was. But I'm saying Wallace and Gromit has been a previous Oscar winner.
Yeah.
But last year, Netflix wasn't nominated last year, but they were nominated twice in 2022, Pinocchio and The Sea Beast, and
Yes. Yeah.
then Mitchell's. They were nominated in 2021. So look, Netflix is a really interesting case this year. They've got a number of films. They've got. We might as well just talk about Netflix while we're on the
Yeah.
topic of Wallace and
As a
Gromit. Let me
group.
just lay out the big picture. They've got Studio Ponux, The Imaginary. They have
Yeah.
Spellbound, which is the Skydance film. They have Ultraman Rising. They have this
Yeah.
film That Christmas, which is a holiday film. I've seen this, and I actually really liked That Christmas. I thought it was a really
That's good.
sweet. It's a small film, but it's a really sweet film, and I don't know if that's an Oscar contender in that context, but I do know it's a really good film. And then they have Wallace and Gromit, and
Yeah.
I think that they're probably positioning Wallace and Gromit as their front runner, but Aardman has been a complete kind of flop at the box office, and their films. Well, that's their films like Shaun the Sheep movie that I think that got nominated.
Mm.
But their films have not really resonated uh, with audiences. I think in the way that a lot of animated features have in the last decade or so. And
Yeah.
Wallace and Gromit, like this is their star property, and they're
Yeah.
even returning the penguin from The Wrong Trousers, Feathers McGraw, I think. Is that his name?
Yeah. That's him.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they're putting
And
everything they got into this.
they I will say this, Nick Park. Obviously his last film wasn't very well regarded, Early Man, but
Mm.
everything he's done before that has been Oscar nominated.
Yeah.
Chicken Run, um, obviously the Wallace and Gromit, and I think all the Wallace and Gromit shorts won Oscars, as far as I know. He's won four, and I think he's the only man to have ever lost an Oscar to himself. So he was nominated twice one year, and he lost and won in that category, which was
Really?
Creature Comforts and I think the first Wallace and Gromit. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, so I mean, he's Nick Park's track record in the Oscars is very strong, very very strong. But we'll wait and we'll see. And he's directing this, co-directing with Merlin Crossingham, who has been a veteran at Aardman for a long time and was involved in all the Wallace and Gromit stuff. So it's in good hands, and those films play so well. People love, like you said, it is their star property, Wallace and Gromit. So I'd be really, really curious. I've not heard or seen much about it. I did get to speak to Nick and Merlin at Annecy briefly, but I didn't ask much about the film. I just was gushing about how much I loved the previous stuff. Um, but yeah, I'd be really curious. And his track record is close to flawless.
Yeah. Yeah, I think again, this is a weird year. We don't know, but this is
Don't
certainly there's so
know.
many good films. I mean, you really don't know, but I
Yeah,
think Netflix's probably best hope is Wallace and Gromit in terms of awards, right? But
yeah, yeah.
we'll see. Then we have this film Piece by Piece, which is an animated documentary about Pharrell Williams done in the Lego style. And it premiered last month at Telluride. And the reactions were kind of middling on the film. But I think it's going to be a very successful film within the context of the fact that it's a documentary, right? But it's a
Mm.
really original take on the Talking Head style documentary done entirely in animation. And this film, I'm going to say it right now, I think it's going to be a nominee.
Mm.
I just think that you have a major music star telling his life story. It's inspirational. It makes people feel good about themselves. And the critics were kind of
Oh,
hard on it that it's like hagiography and it's really, it's not
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
in deep or anything, but it's not designed to be that. It's a film for, it's a film, it's a documentary really for kids to inspire them that they can aspire to be anything they want. And
Ah,
I think that this film this is, again, there's so many dark horses this year. Like there's so many elements that go into like, will this film be nominated? But you got a major music star, Pharrell Williams, and he's going to be doing his work, and he's beloved in Hollywood. I
Yeah.
think this film is very much going to be a nominee this year. And if that, and for me, it's one of the three films, along with Inside Out and Wild Robot, that I believe is going to be nominated, and very likely Wallace and Gromit. But I don't know that one. I haven't seen enough of the film to really know.
Yeah.
But this film just seems to have so many of the right elements, and it's something different for animation, which is I actually wouldn't be surprised though too if it maybe loses out on a best animated feature and gets nominated for best documentary, because this film could be nominated in multiple categories.
Kind of like Flea. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's interesting.
it's at 7, but I really think it's going to
Yeah.
be.
I think Variety had that at 3 actually for
Well,
their list.
let's see Variety's list.
Yeah. And while you're looking there, I just want to say we have another comment. Tracy Shaw, I think DreamWorks Animation funded Chicken Run. They did. It was a co-production. It was in partnership because Aardman had a deal to produce 3 films with DreamWorks, and one was Chicken Run, Flushed Away, and then the Wallace and Gromit film, and that was their 3-film partnership. So you're absolutely right. They were part of Chicken Run, DreamWorks. Yeah.
So we're looking at Variety here for their
Yeah.
these are their predictions, and they've got Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Piece by Piece, The Wild Robot.
Yeah.
I think, I actually think it's crazy that they don't have Netflix on there. I do think
Yeah.
Wallace and Gromit, if the film is anywhere near decent, that's going to be in there, and then the list to me makes sense, except there's no Wallace and Gromit on it, and then Memoir of a Snail and Flow. I don't know which one of those two is gonna. Both of them, like we said, could potentially be nominated, but I don't think both of them are going to get nominated if you got Wallace and Gromit in there too.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So then we got a bunch of other films. We don't need to go through all of them, but we have Lord of the Rings, which is
The War of the Rohirrim.
Japanese produced film, an American produced film, but made in Japan. It's made by Warner Brothers, and it's being released by their subsidiary New Line Cinema. I don't know. Lord of the Rings has always done pretty well at the Oscars, but genre films like this, they haven't done too well in the animation category in the past. So,
I don't really. I'm not feeling it. I hope it's a great movie for me to watch it, and I love Lord of the Rings. It's my favorite trilogy ever. But and it has all the hotheads behind it. All the right people behind it as well. So I'd be really curious to see how that plays out. Despicable Me 4.
Let's since we're on the topic of Lord of the Rings, though, Transformers 1 is similar to that. It's a kind of a genre film, and I just don't think it hasn't come out yet. I can see from outside of my place a billboard for it for the last month. So I see
Who's
it
on it? Optimus Prime.
I don't know, probably. Yeah, it's Optimus Prime and the other guy. So I don't know. This is
Megatron,
whatever.
we all know what you watched when you were a kid.
Oh, I did. I watched Transformers every day, but I haven't. I kind of aged out of it, I think. But a lot of people have not. So
yeah, that's true.
So these films are still being watched. Again, it might do really well. I don't think Transformers 1 is an Oscar contender, but I'm sure it'll do well. But the point of today is not like, is it a good film or not? Is it a film that could be nominated for the Oscar? That's the whole point of doing this exercise, where a film like Flow could be nominated, and a film like Transformers 1, like, it has zero shot of being nominated by the Academy members, right? Because they just don't view we're trying to figure out what's going to be nominated. We're not trying to figure out we're not trying to pass a judgment on the value of a film.
Mm.
Um, but certainly, I don't think Transformers One is going to be nominated. Lord of the Rings, though, I don't know. That's certainly,
It's
you
hard
know, in
to
the
know.
realm of
Yeah.
possibility because it's
Mm.
Weta, it's Peter Jackson's producing it. I think it just really depends on how it's received by people. But you were saying now,
Mm.
Despicable Me 4. What are your
Yeah, I didn't really have thoughts. But that did very well this summer as well. You know, it's in a lot of people's consciousness. Um, but I don't see that being nominated. Do you? I don't, because of the if you it's a studio film for sure, but in terms of like the quality of other studio films when it comes across like all levels, it would be beaten out. I think if DreamWorks had released maybe a film that was not The Wild Robot, it would be Despicable Me versus whatever that film is. You know, Kung Fu Panda 4, let's say. But because of The Wild Robot, it kind of knocked them off. I don't really see them getting in there because of that.
Illumination has never had much luck at the Oscars, and I think they're not making films for
I
Oscars,
don't
right?
think
They're,
do they care. Does he seem to care about that, Chris Melandandri? Is that
you know, I think in Hollywood, everyone cares like that. He would love
yeah,
to, I'm sure, be recognized for that. But I think
yeah.
his bread and butter is making a lot of money for Universal, right? And
What was
so, you know,
the Super Mario? Was the Super Mario movie nominated last year? Was it?
no, no, it wasn't. I think the
I don't
only
think
time
so.
he's ever been nominated was, I think, Despicable Me 2. I could look that up, but that might be the only time
Wow.
Illumination's been nominated. And you know, they've made this film is again edging towards $1 billion, right? Like he's
Yeah.
not. No one's crying at Universal that this film's not nominated. They love the fact that this film's making money, but not
Yeah.
every in Hollywood, you know, you're making certain films for awards and you're making certain films to make money. And this film's designed to make money. It's not designed
Mm.
to, you know, win awards. So I think they know that too. They're not like making this film and going like, oh, you know, we're gonna put a lot of, you know, passion and art into it
Yeah.
for the purpose of
But
winning an award. We're gonna put passion and art into it because we want to make an entertaining film that people want to watch. And they did that.
mm.
So you know, it's a success on its own
And they
terms.
still put out as much. And do they still put out as much for your consideration stuff? You know, is that do
Yeah,
they? Well, I guess they would. Yeah.
they usually do push the films,
Yeah.
but this year, keep in mind, Wild Robot is also a Universal film, and I think they know
Mm.
they have that one like in the bag, right? So I would
Yeah.
expect them to be pushing that film much harder than they're going to be pushing Despicable Me 4, just because they know like
Yeah.
that's their film that's going to be winning awards for them, not this film.
Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah. Then we have a bunch of other films here. That Christmas, we already talked about that.
Yeah.
Again, I like this film a lot, and I actually wouldn't be surprised to see it kind of contending because
Mm.
it's a I when I finished first watching the film, my immediate thought was I actually want to see it again, right? And
Wow.
part of that was though I wasn't sure, like I wasn't sure how much I liked it. Like I really liked it at first watch, but
Yeah.
I was intrigued by it a lot, and
Mm.
I kind of want to see it again just to see whether my initial impressions hold up. We got Chicken
Yeah.
for Linda. So this is
Yeah.
interesting
Beautiful
because
film.
beautiful film. Sebastian Laudenbach is his Girl Without
Mm.
Hands is an absolute masterpiece.
Hmm.
But this film has no shot whatsoever. And it's funny because G Kids. This is the first G Kids film that has appeared on the list, and they released
Yeah.
Boy and the Heron last year, which won the Oscar,
Yes.
right? But
Yeah.
they've been traditionally they've always been nominated once, sometimes twice in the same year for films.
Mm.
And this year they don't you know they don't seem to have anything that uh, is going to be an Oscar contender. So that just,
Yeah.
you can tell, like on this list, at number 12 is the first time they're appearing one of their projects. So
Mm.
we'll
Well,
see.
even still, you've got things like, because I know they have The Colors Within, which is what's her name, Naoko
Yeah.
Yamada's film,
Yes.
and her work is always beautiful as well, but they're not Hayao Miyazaki. That's the thing, and that's look, that says it in itself, and Miyazaki has become so much more in popular culture beyond now the animation sphere, because a lot of artists that speak to people who are outside of, and I mean, musical artists, um they reference Ghibli films all the time. Like Billie Eilish's new album, she has a song called Chihiro on it, and it's a clear reference to Spirited Away, and she's always talking about, you know the how much Spirited Away literally informs her aesthetic. So it's just, the Miyazaki's worlds have kind of transcended the bounds of animation that these other creators haven't really gotten past yet, or
Yeah.
ever will, maybe.
Yeah. He's been around for a long time.
A
I mean,
long
it's been a long
time.
bit. It's been a long build, right? He was
Yeah,
for decades. He was kind of like beloved in animation, but he wasn't part of the cultural conversation. And today
yeah,
he's finally achieved that at the age of
yeah.
like I don't know, 80
80
something.
something, yeah,
Yeah,
82 or
82, I
something.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So then we have
Funny.
Spellbound. Did Billie Eilish do something for Spellbound? I can't remember. Does she
Gosh,
have a
did
song in
she?
that?
Wow,
I don't know.
that's a great
You can
question.
maybe search that up.
Yeah.
But Spellbound, Skydance, John Lasseter producing the film. They've actually been the trailers for the film. They're like from the people who made like Toy Story and Cars, and they're actually
Mm.
touting Lasseter's achievements. I haven't seen this film, for the
Yes.
record, so I, I
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's directed by Vicki Jensen, who
Hmm.
won the first Oscar. She was one of the co-directors of Shrek. So it has some
Shrek.
real
Yeah.
talent behind it. But again, like Skydance's first film, Luck, just did not do much, and partly because it was on Apple, and
Mm.
no one saw the film. Spellbound is on Netflix, and they're definitely gonna be putting a lot behind it. But it might be again one of those films that's super popular with audiences, but it may not be an awards film. I don't know, but
Yeah.
just the fact that it's number 13 here, and there's no buzz behind the film whatsoever. So
Yeah. Which
we'll
is
see
kind of
how it
crazy,
plays out.
actually, because Alan Menken wrote the music for it
Yeah,
as well,
yeah. You have an
which is,
Oscar-winning director. You have
obviously he's
Alan
famous for.
Menken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, let's just kind of go quickly through this.
Yeah.
You got Kung
Sorry,
Fu
keep going.
Panda before, you know. Uh,
Yeah, we talked about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Again, when you got the Wild Robot, there's no other DreamWorks film in the conversation this year, right? You have the Wild Robot. You don't need anything else at this point. Johnny Puff's Secret Mission. What's your thoughts on that?
That was my favorite film this year.
Yeah, mine
And
too.
yeah, no, what is it? Johnny Puff's Secret Mission? I never even heard of it.
I've not heard of this film, and I find it amazing that it's. You can tell we're kind of we're done with the discussion, because when you get to Johnny Puff, like there's nothing else to talk about. I'm amazed that it's above The Imaginary, though, by Studio Pontic. I mean, I don't know. I think the list is starting to kind of fall apart
Wow.
at this point.
Let me put this out there. If you've never heard of this, I'm going to read out something to you that's going to sound insane, Amid. A gibberish speaking puffin played by Johnny Depp.
Whoa,
Yeah.
Johnny Depp. Okay.
So he's Johnny Puff in this film. And
That
apparently he
is.
invented some kind of a language for the title character. Wow.
I have a feeling that this might have had another title, and I
Yeah,
can't
and they
even see the
brought in someone.
thumbnail, but I'm curious. Like, this might be like some other film that they retitled. I don't know. You got The Imaginary. I think certainly,
Yeah, that's Ponnock. Yeah.
it's in the realm of possibility, but not really. They got the Garfield movie, which is not in the realm of possibility. Ultraman
Yeah.
Rising.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, that's Netflix as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Netflix. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's I don't know.
that had a great. A lot of people loved that. That had a really good uh, punch, at least in the industry. People really, really appreciated it.
yeah,
I don't know how much of a punch it had outside of that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, in an Oscar context, I don't think it has much of a punch.
Yeah.
And then you have all these other films as well. Now, keep in mind, last year, uh, 33 animated films were qualified for the Oscars. This list only has 23, and we know there's a lot more films out there that are going to be qualified for the Oscars. So
Mm.
this is kind of a preliminary list, but there's going to be a lot of films this year that are contending. We can look at this site here too. This is just quickly. This is Gold Derby, which is another kind of Oscar site, and so they're saying Wild Robot, Inside
Is
Out
Johnny
2.
Puff on that
Yeah,
list? Sorry.
yeah. Johnny Puff did not make this list, so.
Yeah.
But they got the Wild Robot, Inside Out 2. Those are the shoe-ins. We know those are nominated. Then they have Flo, Memoir of a Snail, and Wallace and Gromit. And then they have Piece by Piece at number 6. I think Piece by Piece is another one of the shoe-ins along with Wild Robot and Inside Out 2. That's the only other one that I would like bet money on. But are you having a good time there with Johnny Puff?
Johnny Puff, of course. I'm stuck on Johnny Puff.
We gotta find out more about this film because I feel
I
feel
need to
embarrassed that
know.
we haven't even
Yeah.
covered it. Like I don't even know what this is. If anybody's seen Johnny Puff, please comment. We do have a comment. He says, "I see Transformers, or what does this say? I see Transformers 1 and Wild
Numbers
Robot
one and what?
get noms."
Oh, get noms. That's good.
Yeah. So
What
so,
about
so
Johnny Puff? Sorry, you continue. I'll pull myself together in a second.
this list has it's all the films we've covered except one film that we hadn't covered, which is the third DreamWorks
Johnny
film.
Puff. Oh, sorry. The third DreamWorks film, yeah.
Are we gonna?
Okay,
I gotta get close up of this of your breakdown over Johnny Puff here.
I'm properly crying. I'm actually crying over this. It's just, it's just a phrase when you get the Johnny Puff, you know you're done. Sorry. So yeah,
Okay.
the third DreamWorks film we haven't talked
this
about.
is the third DreamWorks film, Orion in the Dark. This was direct to
Oh,
streaming
yes.
to Netflix, and it was written by Charlie Kaufman, and it was adapted by Charlie Kaufman from a book
Yeah.
into a film. It's interesting. We hadn't even talked about this film, and I actually
that's
forgot. I didn't even have it on my list of Netflix films. I don't know. I think in another year it would certainly be in the conversation. This year I don't see it being in the conversation as much. You know, you have so many other films that could potentially come above it to take a nomination, including Moana 2, right? Even if you look at the first even if you look at the first 7 entries on this list, all of them would be ahead of Orion in the Dark in terms of getting a nomination. So I just don't see it. It's a lovely film,
It's lovely, yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't see it being talked about this year. And also I think one of the issues was they released it so early in the year that even myself, like going through this list right now, I completely had forgotten about the film. That certainly has an impact on the Oscars when you release a film, and
Yes,
they did
has
not.
to be in the zeitgeist. Yeah.
Yeah, but also as I'm talking about this, I remember that they're not even qualifying this for the Oscars. I believe they were viewing it as a television production. So
Oh, interesting.
so
Okay.
I don't even think Netflix is pushing this one. We have a comment here. Is there a chance that an anime will get nominated this year?
Great question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I can't really see it happening. My ones would obviously, look, Lord of the Rings is an anime.
It is
War of the Rohirrim. It is. You've got
completely produced
things
in
like,
Japan, Japanese
yeah,
director,
but if you're kind of going more into things like the Imaginary or
colors.
yes, yeah, yeah. Sorry, Johnny Puff is still on my mind here. The colors within, which again, her work is just astounding. I remember seeing the one about the deaf girl. Can't remember the name of it right now. I can't believe I've forgotten it. I bawled my eyes out watching that film, and her stuff always gets to me. It is just she's such a brilliant director. But in terms of it being within the zeitgeist, like I'm not sure because you have things like there's always Demon Slayer movies that come out or something like that, and I know there's one out this year as well. Um, they don't tend to speak to Academy voters so much. Do you know what I mean? There has to be some kind of push uh, within the cultural scene of that industry, like The Boy in the Heron Hat, right? Because that was pushed. It was hailed as the final masterpiece of the greatest director of our time, you know, and there are things you can actually say that are true about that film. Um, but in terms of the colors within, you know, that's G Kids as well. And are they pushing much this year? Meet, have you seen much by them?
Haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but again, it's still early. It is still early. It is.
The
Maybe they'll
animation
ratchet
race
up in November.
really picks up around October, November. So
Yeah.
we're still. This is why I said early predictions because we're still kind of early in this game, and a lot of these films are not out yet. And even films that have been released, like Flow, like that's not getting a theatrical release. I think till October or November. So a lot of the films that are out still haven't really penetrated the culture in the U.S.
Mm.
I mentioned this here. Uh, yeah, so Flow I think is in November, but we have like next month we have 5 animated features coming out, and Memoir of a
Yeah.
Snail and Piece by Piece. They're both getting wide. I don't know if they're wide, but they're both getting kind of their domestic distribution next month, and those are two of the key contenders. And then you have all these other films that are coming out as well. So animation used to be like you'd get one film a month or something, but now you're
Hmm.
getting, you know, 5 films a month, and
Yeah.
it's really incredible. I mean, we're finally seeing because what's amazing about this list here is these 5 films are not all like family animation films, right? They're all targeting
Yeah.
different audiences. And this is what we've
Hmm.
been dreaming of for years and years and years. And finally, it's happening. So we're seeing a very robust, positive moment for theatrical feature animation. And I only see it growing from here, right? Because there's just so much
Mm.
production happening. It may not seem like it because a lot of the traditional producers, like they're kind of not being as active in LA, the big studios, but certainly we're seeing a lot of animation being produced. So yeah, I think this picture is really going to clarify itself, starting next month.
Mm.
But I wanted to get this out there because I think it's important to talk about these films and to kind of get a perspective on who might have a shot this year. So I again like sometimes you can kind of have a clear idea of who the 5 nominees are this year outside of 3 films, Inside Out 2, Wild Robot, and Piece by Piece. And
Yeah.
probably Wallace and Gromit. That might be the fourth. Those are the only ones I can really speak about. And even Piece by Piece, that's like my opinion. That doesn't really, it may not be as successful as I'm expecting it to be, right? But that's just
Mm.
my personal take on it. I don't know if you have a personal take on what you think is going to be nominated. Oh, one film we didn't mention, Most Precious of Cargoes, which was
Mm.
open con and and was played at Annecy. I can't remember if it won at Annecy, but I didn't.
I don't think so. Yeah.
What was
It
the
isn't.
winning? I can't
Well,
even remember
it
what the
might.
winning film at Annecy was this year.
I think it was Flow.
No, that I don't think that won the main prize. I think that won the jury
Did it not?
prize. Yeah. Might want to search that up, or if
Um,
anybody's watching, if they can search what the winning film at Annecy was.
Let me have a look here. I'll pull it up real quick. Do you remember the movie Arctic Dogs? Did you ever hear that?
Yeah,
So they
wasn't as
spun
good as
off a
Johnny
TV
Puff.
series. They spun off a TV series called Puffins, which is what Johnny Puff comes from. And Johnny Depp has been voicing
Really?
the lead character in that show since 2020. And it's called, and he plays Johnny Puff in that show called Puffins. And it's there is 250 episodes of 5-minute episodes. Insane, isn't it?
I
And
don't.
this just
Is
flew
that?
under the radar.
I
I've
don't know
never.
if it's based on Arctic Dogs though. Is it?
It is, yeah. It's a spin off. Yeah.
Really?
And a spin off film. Yeah. It's a spin off of the film Arctic Dogs. Yep. There
This
you go.
the
And
Johnny
Memoir of a
Puff.
Snail won at Annecy.
Ah,
Those,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, but we didn't even mention Most Precious of Cargoes, and I don't even know if it
Yes.
has a U.S. distributor yet. But it's Michael Havanasius, who's
Mm,
did the artist, I think, right? I mean,
yeah.
that's quite a star live action director behind it. That may actually, the fact that it doesn't have distribution at this moment in the U.S. kind of
Mm,
suggests to me that it
mm.
might be coming out next year,
Uh,
and it might be a contender
because
next year.
that was listed to compete for the Palme d'Or at Cannes,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't it? This
Yeah,
year. Yeah, that
yeah,
was up there. So,
yeah.
you know,
And then next year we
that's
got Sylvain Chomet's new film coming out too. I think.
yeah.
I think
Wow.
it's going to be a big year again for animation. If that film comes out, that's been
Mm.
in the works forever. But if that comes out, you're going to have a really interesting conversation around that film. But
Yeah, and then I also forget that things like Savages came out, Sauvage,
it
and
doesn't have U.S. distribution. I suspect that's going to be next year as well.
next year as well. Wow,
Yeah.
big punching storm. Anyway, sorry, I was so focused on Johnny Puff there, I didn't even listen to what you asked me a while ago. Did I have a take on something? I don't.
Okay.
I didn't. Yeah, sorry. Um,
The good thing about being
yeah,
in Ireland is, when you're in LA, you're kind of like, these are like topics of discussion, but then you forget like around the world, like people don't really care about this stuff, right?
no, it's so that's all people do, and they have Oscar prediction parties and all this stuff. The Oscars is huge globally. That's
Oh, is it? Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, it is the global film event, and everyone wants to be nominated for an Oscar. Everyone, and it's just you kind of when you work in the industry, you see it a bit, like you see the distance. But again, if I worked on an Oscar nominated film, I'd be telling everyone. Of course, I would. So, once I get on Johnny Puff the sequel, we'll start talking.
Okay.
His secret mission seems to be letting no one know that it exists. Yeah, sorry. Anyways, next story. Unless you're wrapping
No,
this up,
I
Edward.
think we're done.
Yeah.
This
Oh, okay.
conversation, went on much longer than I thought it was going to go. But this was a interesting kind of first look at the Oscars, and I think we're going to be revisiting this conversation probably.
Next week.
Yeah.
Sorry. Every week until
No, but
until
we're gonna
after
be
the
revisiting
Oscars.
it next month probably, and
Mm,
the field may have changed dramatically by then, because one of the points that I just want to make is that a lot of these films are not out yet. We don't know,
yeah. Yeah.
and we don't know what's going to happen. Besides Inside Out 2 and Wild Robot, those are the ones that are
Seem pretty solid.
guaranteed
Yeah.
nominations.
Yeah.
Beyond that,
Mm,
it's still kind of an interesting year. So usually by this time of year, you kind of have a better sense of who's going to be nominated, and I can't predict it this year. So
yeah. Me
well,
neither. Me neither.
anyway, this was a fun conversation, and we'll be back hopefully next Friday with
Yeah.
a guest next week. So
Oh, exciting.
so yeah, it should be a
We have Johnny Puff joining us. But thank you so much, everyone. And thanks for your comments and thoughts as always. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye, bye, bye.